Welcome to the Tough Decisions Daily Show with your hosts, Dan and Danae Hanford. As entrepreneurs and real estate investors, we are faced with tough decisions on a daily basis. These tough decisions can either make us or break us. On this show, you will hear from highly successful people sharing their stories behind tough decisions that they have had to make along their journey of success. In every episode, you will be able to learn from the thought processes behind the tough decisions that were made. Some of these decisions will have amazing outcomes, and some not so much. So without further ado, your hosts, Dan and Danae.
With us today is Carl Hutchings. He's located in the UK and is the CEO of Elite Investments. His company helps professional athletes and celebrities build wealth through real estate investments. He's a former professional football player with over 300 league appearances. By the time he retired from professional football at the age of 29, he had bought and sold over £5 million worth of property, which equates to a little over $6.5 million US dollars. Carl, welcome to the podcast today.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, tell us a little bit, fill in some of the gaps there about, your football background and how you got into real estate and kind of get us up to speed about where you are now.
Okay. So I think for you guys over that side of the water, you call it soccer. Yes. Soccer was my profession for 13 years. I started off as a little kid down at Chelsea. You guys should know them. It's a big club. And then I moved on to play for various league teams, play professional for, like you mentioned, for over 300 league appearances. And then from there, property is something that I've always loved doing. It's something that I've always done. So I kind of bought my first property at the age of 19 and got the bug for it and was able to sort of like buy and sell throughout my playing career. Since retiring at 29, I've gone on to set up my company. And like you said, we started off solely working with professional sports athletes, really. When I retired, obviously, most of my friends and colleagues were still in the game. And now over the last number of years, obviously, we've gone a little bit more mainstream because the more popular we've become, the more different investors and people have asked us to kind of like jump on board and work with us.
Well, and it's interesting because, you said that at 19 was when you first bought your first property.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
I don't know very many 19-year-olds that buy a property, especially for an investment, at 19 years old. So what was it at 19 that made you go, I need to buy some property?
Yeah, you know what? It was probably the luckiest thing that happened to me. I had a very wise person in my life at the time who was a youth leader. And I'd known him since sort of like 14. He worked on our estate and he was kind of like, there to keep us kids out of trouble and guide us in the right direction. And we became very good friends, sort of like a mentor. Sort of I looked up to everything he said and tried to sort of like, follow him in the direction that he was taking me. And when I became a professional football player, he kind of said to me, look, you can't be wasting all your money now. I was still living in this state, we was going out and I was hanging out with loads of guys and stuff. And he was like, look, pull me off to one side. He was like, look, you should think about investing. You should think about property. And property was something I never knew anything about because I grew up in a council estate. I grew up in my mum's house with all my brothers and sisters. And, as far as I was concerned, that was my property. That's where I lived and stuff like that. But because he had said that to me, it kind of got my mind thinking. And I thought to myself, okay, what will, if he's saying it's a good idea, it must be a good idea. I've trusted everything he said to me for the last sort of like number of years. And it's kind of like got me to where I'd got to. So I really went along with him. He kind of like done everything for me. I literally just followed him. He introduced me to my first solicitor, my first mortgage broker. He taught me what a mortgage was. He showed me, different number of properties. And within a couple of months, I'd bought my first property. Now at the time, obviously being a professional football player, people looked and thought, oh yeah, it's all right for you. You must be on thousands and thousands of pounds a week. I was on like £170 a week, with a win bonus. I was maybe taking home £220, so I managed to do it, but obviously I scrimped and scraped to be able to do it.
Well, it's a good business that you have that you have created here, because how many times do we hear of professional athletes, not just in professional soccer or football or, tennis or, whatever the background is. And I know you also work with celebrities. So a lot of these celebrities we hear about making big, big money. And what usually happens is that they blow that money. They just spend all that money and then they have no investments, they have no business. But there are now, in the United States, we have some athletes that are starting to, buy businesses and start businesses and kind of, invest that money instead of just spending all of it. But a lot of celebrities and professional athletes blow that money right off the bat. And so it's great to have somebody like you that can kind of take them along the side and say, hit them upside the head a little bit and say, hey, don't spend all that money on useless stuff. Invest that property and repurpose that property.
That's where the business kind of came through, because when I was kind of like coming through football, a lot of my colleagues, when I retired quite early at 29. I could have probably carried on playing for another 2 or 3 years. And, where I went into business, I was looking all around me and I was seeing some of my ex-colleagues that I used to play with, coming out and not having anything, and they hadn't invested their money, and I mean, I don't know what it's like in the US. I read some stories, but in the UK, we're looking at probably 67% of professional sports athletes, especially professional football players, go broke within 2 to 5 years of retiring from the game. And I was looking at these figures and I was talking to a few people who were helping out ex-colleagues and helping out ex-professional football players. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is crazy, because it just shouldn't be happening with the amount of money that players were earning. It shouldn't be happening. And I looked into it and I started off working with 1 or 2 of my close friends who were still playing at the time. And, they were so grateful that I was kind of like showing them another avenue, showing them a way where they could kind of like build up an income ready for their retirement. And then they started telling a friend and then another friend. And then before I knew it, I thought, right, okay, this looks like the business for the next 10 years, And that's what we've done. We started rolling it out and really started getting in and trying to educate players and showing them that, look, football's great, soccer's great, being a sports athlete is great, but it doesn't last forever. There's injuries, there's stuff. Your body is only going to last for a certain amount of time.
Well, and I think those numbers are probably pretty low for what happens in the United States as far as 67%. It might be closer to like 80 or 90% here. I don't really know the exact figures, but yeah, you should.
Yeah.
But a lot of people think professional athlete means that they know how to manage money, and it's not. Professional athlete does not mean you can manage anything, and that's why those numbers show that they don't know how to manage their money, and it's true. I don't care how successful you are. If you have a bunch of money like that and you don't know how to manage it properly, you're going to lose it. And so you're in a great position to be able to help them, guide them and direct them on where they should put that money, because, there's a lot of money that is made. And it's kind of like, when people here in the United States win the lottery, the majority of the people who win the lottery and take this lump sum money up front, they have no more money in the next, 2 or 3 years or however much longer after that, because they don't know how to manage it properly and invest it and make money from their money. Once you get to that point where you have money, you got to start to learn how to reinvest that money so that you can actually start to have your money make you money instead of just spending your money.
Yeah. And it's a different psychology. A lot of people who are professional athletes haven't grown up wealthy, haven't grown in wealthy environments with wealthy individuals, and to look after your money and to have your money last over a long period of time, it's a completely different psychology, And I always say, look, professional athletes are great at being a professional athlete. Like you said, when I was playing, I spent all of my time every day of the week or every second of the day focusing on the next game, focusing on my body, focusing on being the best that I could be in my professional career. So therefore, it doesn't mean you're going to be great at everything else,
Yeah, exactly. Along this path that you've had from, from buying your first property to being in professional football, or what we would call soccer here in the States, and getting to where you are now, I'm sure there have been some decisions that you've had to make along the way that have been really tough and really hard. Can you think of one that you made a decision on that didn't have that good of an outcome, that was not as good as you had planned it to be?
Man, I've made many decisions that are bad. People see me now and they go, oh yeah, Carl, it's all right for you. You got this business or you've been doing this properly. Man, I've made some terrible decisions in my life, but they're decisions that you have to learn from. And that's the key thing. One of my biggest decisions I made, which is probably my biggest lesson, and I probably wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't make that decision, but it cost me a lot of money and it cost me a number of years, was I invested in a group of sort of like nightclubs and bars, restaurants down in London. And, look, I would say it was, looking back in hindsight, was it a bad decision? No, because I wouldn't be where I am today. At the time, around the time when I had to sort of like close the door on it all, and I'm looking at my bank account, and there's like, it's sucked out, most of the cash that I had left over in my bank account, or that I'd built up from buying and selling property. At the time, you're thinking, what an idiot I was. But actually now looking backwards, that was the thing that taught me how to run proper business, because up until that point, I'd been able to buy property, put some builders in there, refurbish the property and sell it, but running a business where you've got, staff, you've got chefs, you've got employees, you've got managers, you've got, people who've got to be there responsible to open up in the morning, then close up in the evening, and then be back there and do stock takes and stuff. It's a completely different ballgame, So, that was a decision. And I put that down to investing into something that I didn't know about. I didn't have the experience in, and I didn't go out there to try and seek the experience. I just went along with, I can do this.
Were those investments your sole, like 100% owner investments, or were there other outside investors that you had brought on that you were supporting as well?
Yeah, no, basically, I would say probably 90% of that investment was mine. And okay. I had a few investors make up a small amount. Yeah, probably about 10%. So, yeah, but we lost some money.
What was it in those nightclubs and those bars that really was kind of like the final straw that you decided to go ahead and close them down? And obviously the bank account is one, but looking back, was there some management decision that you made that could have, changed things to make it better, or, have you ever looked at anything from that standpoint?
Yeah, of course. To be honest, after about 4 months of opening the bars, because we opened 3 up all at the same time, like a bar, restaurant, and a night, and a mini cocktail private members bar. And after about 4 or 5 months, I sat down with my accountant, and he said, "Carl, you need to close this." After 5, he said, "You need to close it. You got no chance of making any money." And I looked at him and nearly bursted out laughing, as if to say, this is my place. I'm not going to close it. This is where the ego takes over. And
your emotions start to take an effect.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I was looking at a Saturday night, and I had all of the Premier League lining up to get in my nightclub. I had half the England football team lining up to come in my nightclub. I had celebrities coming in from America, phoning me up on my mobile phone saying, "Hey, can you open up the nightclub for us?" So that was on a Saturday night, but what people wasn't seeing was the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, when no one was in there, and you're paying all these high rents. Imagine being in the middle of New York. I'm in the middle of London town, Soho, and I'm paying ridiculous amounts of rent. But my ego, the fact that I had celebrities phoning up my phone, musicians, phoning up my phone, "Carl, can you open up for us? We're coming in this time." My ego kicked in and took over. So I think what happened was coming back to a decision to close that tough decision, because it was a hell of a decision to say, enough's enough. I can remember it sort of it was like a Wednesday afternoon. I'd done all the numbers for the month. We were down again on the tills and stuff like that. And I just looked and I thought, come on, Carl, look, enough's enough. We've been going nearly 2.5 years. I've been literally paying for it out of my own sort of property portfolio every month, chucking in thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds to try and make up the differences in the rent and the wages and stuff like that. And I looked at it and I thought, enough's enough. We've had enough partying. We've done everything that we need to do. We need to get back into business, and this place isn't going to give us business. So it was literally, I walked in. I didn't actually walk in to close the whole place down, but by the end of that night, I'd called all the staff in. I'd brought them all in. I'd given them literally a week's wages and said, "That's it." And I took all the keys, took them back to my landlord, and I'd that's it. I'd done a deal with the landlord basically, because I was on leases for all of the properties. So I'd done a deal with my landlord to kind of get out of the leases. I think I still had on one property, I still had 10 years left on the lease. Wow. So if he was to hold me to that, I'd be in big trouble. So we sat down and we done a deal, and that was it.
So when you first started these bars and nightclubs and this kind of, investment that you had started with the businesses, your accountant, you said 4 months in, told you just to close them down?
Yeah.
And then you decided to emotionally attach yourself to them for another 2 years?
In the end, we had them for around nearly 3 years, just literally under 3 years, The first year was just one big party. I was just joining the party. I forgot that I was actually the owner and the person responsible for paying, having to make a profit for a business. The second year, we'd made such a loss that I was literally working 24 hours or 23 hours a day. Literally, I literally lived in one of the bars for that second year, trying to make back that money, or at least trying to get it to breaking even where we'd stop losing money. And by the end of year 2, we actually stopped losing money. We actually started breaking even a little bit. And I thought, okay, great, things are on the up. And 6 months later, we were just about every week, just about covering wages, just about maybe I could afford to give myself 100 quid. And then, we struggled like that for the third year. And then I thought, right, okay, you've done it now. You've proved it. You kind of took a business that was literally dying on its feet. You got it back to making money. Let's take these experiences and move on.
Mm-hmm. And so obviously that was a hard lesson to learn, but it's obviously brought you to where you are now. So can you think of a decision maybe that had a different outcome, where that you had made a decision on something that was kind of a hard decision at the time, and you had made that right decision and there was a really positive outcome from that?
I mean, look, at the same time, that Wednesday afternoon, making that decision changed the rest of my life, because from there, I was able to go away. I was able to clear my head. And literally within 9 months, build back a property portfolio that had taken me 13 years to build previously. As a professional sports athlete, as a professional football player, I'd built my portfolio up over 13 years. In 2.5 years of owning this business, I'd literally sold it all up to fund this business that was failing. And then within 9 months, I was able to build back that portfolio through making that decision that, right, we're going to close this down. We're going to do what we know. We're going to take all the experiences that we've got and we're going to wrap them up into this business. Now, I didn't have any money when I started that business the second time round, because as the first time round, it's easy. I'm a professional football player. I'm getting wages every month. I've got other people around me who can invest in me, you know. So to buy a property and do it up isn't that difficult for me at that time. Whereas the second time round, I'm no longer a player. I've got no income. I've got no portfolio left because I've sold it all up to fund this business that's failing. I've got no investors around me because I'm no longer in the industry, so to speak. I'm no longer playing football anymore and stuff like that. So I'm literally starting from minus what most investors would even get into. The only thing I had was my knowledge of 13 years of doing property previously and my knowledge of how now to run a proper business, you know?
The biggest thing that I would say you learned from that is you probably will never open up a nightclub or a bar again, right?
Well, you say that. I actually would, but I'd know how to do it in a completely different manner. Yeah. I would run it, you know, I could now make money in a bar within literally the first 3 months if I was to open one. I get asked all the time that question. What I would do differently, I would tell whoever I'm getting involved in, I will not put a penny into this bar. I would never invest in it myself. I will give you all the systems, the strategy. I'll tell you exactly what you need to do. I'd manage it from a kind of like directorship point of view. And I know that by taking all those lessons from the past, I know literally with my eyes closed how that bar would run or restaurant would run, how you can start making it money straight away from day dot. Would I invest in one again? No. Yeah. I made that decision at the time when I closed that bar, never ever invest another penny in that. But yeah.
Well, that's a good lesson to learn too, you know?
Yeah. And then when you come back to decisions, so basically I made a decision that I was going to go all in property. So when I closed down the bar, I took about 3-4 months out, really just focusing, getting myself back together, finding out exactly, you know, building a strategy really. And then I made the decision that I was going to get an office and I was going to go all in property and I was going to put everything in. I was going to go in. I was going to do things that I'd never done before. I was going to bring on kind of like outside investment. I was going to go in. I started doing presentations. I started inviting people into my office, started doing property presentations about, you know, how if they invest with me, you know, what we're going to do and how we're going to build it up. And at this time, I had nothing apart from my previous experience. All I was going back to was, this is what I've done in the past. You know, yes, it was 2 or 3 years ago, but I'm back and this is what I'm going to do now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So kind of shifting gears a little bit here, can you share something with the listeners about a strategy or a tip or something that you maybe do when you're faced with one of these tough decisions? You know, we've had some people talk to us about, you know, how they kind of, you know, go and pray about it or go talk to an advisor. You know, some people, you know, they haven't actually said this, but some people actually go into a closet in a corner and crawl up in the fetal position and start crying, you know, and obviously that's one way to do it. But is there some sort of, you know, strategy that you would recommend or that you do personally that would help listeners to make these tough decisions?
Yeah. Do you know what I do? I mean, people say that I can handle a lot of stress or whatever. And that's one comment people always say, bloody hell, don't none of this bother you, did it? You know, you're dealing with big £1 million property deals or things that are going wrong or, you know, sites and builders that are, and everything's just like, you know, I just sit on it. I think about the decision that needs to be made and I just let it go. I don't subconsciously, I know that, you know, in the past, I used to make very rash decisions, emotional decisions, you know? And again, it's about looking back and learning from your mistakes and taking everything as a lesson. And I know that I had to change that because, I can get very emotional, very very sort of like irrational at times, So from now on, if ever there's a big decision that needs to be made, I think about it, I acknowledge it, I put it in my subconscious, and I just go away. I'll go to the gym, I'll go, whatever it is I'm doing, go out, play some golf or whatever. I always give it 24 hours before, and then whatever comes back to me, however I just trust in the subconscious, and, I'll wake up that day and I'll know what I need to do.
So would you say that, the process that you go through now is different than maybe your pre-nightclub or your pre-bar day, where before you had that investment, you made some rash emotional decisions, but now because you're trying to take that emotional component out of it because of the situation, the lessons that you learned from that investment and then how that didn't go so well, that now you take that extra time and try to remove the emotional component on it to give it time to kind of simmer?
Yeah, most definitely. I think before, I can make a decision like in a second, and it does only take a second to make a decision. But now I like to just make sure that it's not an emotional decision, and how I can do that is I have to take myself out of that situation for that moment in time, pre sort of like football, soccer and the nightclub industry. I would just go with it. Boom. It would like someone would say something to me. I'd say, all right, okay, fine. Boom. This is a decision done. I don't want to know about it. And albeit sometimes that can, sometimes that works and stuff like that. What I found is sometimes I'd make those decisions just through sheer emotion and looking back on it, not in a business, you can't just make business emotional decisions on the spot because sometimes they don't benefit everybody. They may do it at that moment in time, but do they benefit the business? Do they benefit the people that work in the business? Do they benefit your investors? And what I've learned is that I need to take everybody into consideration.
Absolutely. And do you have a favorite book that you have read recently or in your past that has helped you make these better decisions as an entrepreneur?
I like to read different books on decision making. Not really. What I like to do is educate myself around the decisions that I have to make. So for instance, at the moment we're just launching a new product and it's a training product, which is going to be based online. Now, the decisions that I make around that now is I'm having to learn some new skills. Yeah. And I'm having to talk to different people with these skills. So I'll read up and get as much information around the information that I need to know in order then to make a decision, or I'll speak to the people that are more experienced than myself in that industry, or, and then make a decision. So I'm trying now to make decisions based on the information and the knowledge that we have.
Sure. What's the most exciting thing that you've done with the money that you've made in your life up to this point?
Exciting. Every day is exciting. I mean, are you talking about like holidays and stuff like that? Or
yeah, like have you traveled somewhere that's really exotic or exciting, or have you bought some nice car or house or expensive ring for your spouse or something like that?
Okay. I mean, look, I love to travel. Travel is one of the things why I do what I do. On Saturday, literally, I'm going off to Barbados. I love skiing in the winter. I love playing golf in between. So I love to, work hard, play hard. I love work. I don't see it as work. I would never call this work. I love what I do. And then I also love taking my family away on holidays, taking myself away on holidays with my friends as well. I just went over to Vegas. I think, was you over at Vegas with Grant Cardone?
I was, yeah.
Yeah. So I was over there. So, I enjoy doing those sort of things with my team, jumping up and just doing what you can when you
having
can,
the
basically.
Flexibility to go whenever you want to go and travel wherever you want to travel. What's the number one item on your bucket list right now of either a place you want to go or a thing you want to buy or something like that?
Well, I just watched the Monaco Grand Prix and I've never been to a Grand Prix, but for many years now, I've said I want to get one of those yachts on the side where, just hire it for the weekend. I don't want to buy one of them, I don't want that expense, but, and get some friends and family out there and chill out on that yacht as the Grand Prix going around and stuff like that. So that's something on my bucket list that, definitely I'm thinking I want to do that. And then really just travel and do and see some other places that I haven't seen yet.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. Well, I really appreciate you being on the show with us today, Carl. How can the listeners reach out to you if they want to find out more information or just reach out and ask you a question, maybe a follow-up from the podcast?
So you can contact me on my Instagram, which is @CarlHutchings, or on Facebook, which is Elite Property Investments with Carl Hutchings. So yeah, they're probably the best way. Social media, nice and easy, you know, at
Sure.
Carl Hutchings on Instagram, or Elite Property Investments with Carl Hutchings on Facebook.
Well, thank you so much again for being on the show with us today. I know you're a busy guy with lots of different things in the pot, and hope you enjoy your trip to Barbados this weekend as well.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right. Take care.
Do you want to nominate a highly successful entrepreneur or real estate investor to be a guest on this show? Email us at dan@toughdecisions.net. Help us by spreading the word about our show with your friends. And also take time right now to subscribe and leave a review on iTunes, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or your favorite platform. You've been listening to The Tough Decisions Show.